President Biden will deliver his second State of the Union address tonight. After that, Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders will give the Republican response. The speeches could also set the stage for the upcoming 2024 presidential campaigns. Biden has yet to say whether or not he plans to run for re-election, while former President Trump has already declared his candidacy. So for more on the Republican response, I want to bring in CBS News Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa and Matt Gorman, who is here in Studio 57 with us. He is the former National Republican Congressional Committee Communications Director and the Vice President of Targeted Victory, a marketing agency. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. I think I'm going to start right here in the studio, though, with you, Matt. What does the decision to have Sarah Huckabee Sanders deliver the official response mean? What does it say?
Well, I think there's a lot of herald when she was elected. She's the youngest female governor ever elected, obviously coming from the Trump White House as the former press secretary, brings that communication experience and savvy. I think there is a debate always when these sorts of responses happen. You can never live up to a packed house chamber when everybody's in their feet, no matter the party for most of it. So, some people say do away with it. You're never going to top it. Give the folks the night. Some people say it's important to have that response in there. So in some ways, it's a thankless job.
As I understand it, though, she sort of occupies a unique position in that she enjoys the support of the MAGA Republicans, but also Republicans who may not necessarily support the former president.
Yeah, that's true. I knew people that worked with her on her campaign, and they have wonderful things to say about her. And again, I think it's what you're going to hear tonight with her is talk about the contrast between what Democrats say and what they end up doing. And I think you're going to be hearing that a lot, whether it's kind of people in the speech when they do the statutory hall interviews right outside the Capitol or later tonight.
Robert, what are you going to be listening for in this Republican response?
The Republican response is typically an opportunity for rising stars to make a mistake, to stumble. We've seen so many party responses, whether they're from a Democrat or Republican over the years, create not a moment for political opportunity for the participant, but of peril, in the sense that if you look awkward on camera, you reach for a water bottle, you have some kind of stumble in your delivery, that this will be a defining moment, at least early in your career on the national stage. So it's a real high wire act for someone even as someone who's as experienced on communications as Governor Sanders is in Arkansas, someone who has all that experience at the White House lectern. This is still a moment where you're on live television in a one camera setting usually, and you have to deliver on teleprompter with emphasis, with emotion, but also really stick to the script. And as anyone knows, in the script reading business or the television business, conveying emotion while also reading word by word, it can be a difficult prospect in terms of really coming across with a powerful message.
And Robert, what do you expect is going to be in that script?
She is someone who is supported by Speaker Kevin McCarthy, by Leader McConnell in the Senate. You are going to hear much about the issues that are facing Washington right now. When I was speaking to some sources close to the leadership last night, they said they expect this to be almost a Tea Party era speech. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, do you remember when President Obama was elected in 2008? Those early Republican responses in 2009 and 2010 and 11 were often about cutting spending. And this is a refrain for the Republicans that is coming back a decade later, even though they spent a lot of money during the Trump years. This is something they want to make as their political spotlight issue this time around once again.
Let me ask you, Matt. No doubt President Biden is going to talk about the need for bipartisanship, working together. The debt ceiling is sort of top of mind. I'm wondering if you think that whatever what the president or Sarah Huckabee Sanders says is going to shape this conversation moving forward about the debt ceiling. What needs to be cut? What needs to stay? How will they find common ground? What
surprised me about this whole debt ceiling debate is how far in advance it's happening, right? One thing about Washington is they don't do anything until they absolutely have to.
That's true.
And the debt ceiling, in theory, isn't going to hit until probably this summer. And I think what you saw yesterday with Kevin McCarthy, more importantly, that's what I looked at. When he gave a speech around 5:30 yesterday, talked about the importance of the debt ceiling, being able to cut spending as part of any deal, but yet emphasizing he wants to lift it. They're having this conversation way far out, and I think McCarthy is being very clear so no one can accuse him or candidly the president of trying to slip something in at the last hour. They're making their intentions known months in advance.
But we should expect months and months of this sort of discussion.
Absolutely. I mean, there's going to be posturing, and it's going to look like there's going to be absolutely no deal until, candidly, there is. We all remember 10 years ago with the super committee, how we went to literally hours in January 2011 from default, and it was saved at the last minute.
All right, so thinking about the 2024 election and hopefuls, yesterday on Red and Blue, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson said that he still hasn't decided whether or not he wants to throw his hat into the election ring. I want to play some of what he had to say.
The important thing for me is to be out there and talk about the border security issues, but also the support for Ukraine that I think is important and sometimes wanes across America. People need to hear that message. We need to look for solutions when it comes to the crime in the streets and to make sure that we enforce our law. And then, of course, inflation is still hurting Americans. And so we want to develop these solutions. And if that message carries out, that I can make a decision at the right time as to the role that I will play in 2024 and continue to look at potential presidential campaign.
Matt, right now, the only person that has declared, thrown their hat into the ring officially has been the former president. I'm wondering, where the Republican Party stands right now in terms of potential hopefuls to run for in 2024. What's the feeling about the current crop of options?
I think you saw Donald Trump announce early, possibly in his mind, maybe to scare the field or consolidate it. That certainly hasn't happened. I think it really hasn't weighed in much folks' mind. I mean, Nikki Haley said she wasn't going to run. Now she is. She's going to be announcing next week. I think aside from her, a lot of folks aren't in a rush to get in. You're seeing Ron DeSantis likely to wait until after the Florida legislative session when that ends up probably later this spring. There isn't a rush yet. Don't put yourself out there. Don't make it a one-on-one versus Trump until you absolutely have to.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts and then get Robert's on the same question. Does this mean that the GOP is stepping away, pushing away from Trump a bit?
The only way you're going to defeat Trump is the ballot box, right? And I think in many ways, we say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. So if you see a primary voter that is not necessarily hating Trump, but just kind of tired, wants somebody who can win, that's the voter I think that can switch.
Robert, do you see it the same way?
In 1975, when Jimmy Carter started running for president, people would go, "Jimmy who?" And he would say, "I'm Jimmy Carter. I'm running for president." He had to introduce himself. Nobody knew who he was. And when you listen to Governor Hutchinson there, now the former governor of Arkansas, I thought back to Carter, 1975, that whole story, because if someone like Governor Hutchinson, who has a very low national profile, wants to get in the race, it's going to take a grassroots effort in a state like Iowa, which elevated Jimmy Carter decades ago. And when you talk to people like Governor Hutchinson, it's evident, according to their allies, that a state like Iowa still remains the target. That even in an atmosphere where Trump is the dominant political force, draws a lot of media attention, if you're a challenger, you're going to need to start to meet voters and try to create momentum on the ground, from the ground up. It's not an easy thing to do in an age politically where advertising and social media is so important in terms of carving out that national profile and fundraising space. But there's not really another path. It doesn't look like Governor Hutchinson's the type to become a social media TikTok celebrity who can draw attention that way. So it will probably be the old-fashioned traditional campaign should he get in the race. And he reminds me of others, not ideologically, but in terms of their political position, like Governor Chris Sununu of New Hampshire, or former Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland. If these men and women want to get in, it's going to be a long slog. Former Ambassador Nikki Haley, as Matt said, likely to get in next week in South Carolina, much more of a higher profile due to her 2 terms as governor, her time as UN ambassador. But even for her, in a Trump-dominated Republican Party, she will have to spend the time on the ground, as she is planning to do, I'm told, to go to South Carolina, New Hampshire, Iowa, et cetera.
Robert Costa, you always have some good bits of history that I think are helpful in this context. Thanks to you and to Matt Gorman. Thanks to both of you.